Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our State of Student Debt Summit. My name is Sabrina Calazans, and I'm the Executive Director here at the Student Debt Crisis Center. We are going to get things started right away. There are going to be many of you joining us today, and we are pleased to have you. Um, let's go to the next slide, and we'll jump right into things. All right. So if you don't know who we are, the Student Debt Crisis Center is a national advocacy organization with 2 million supporters nationwide, and we are calling for fundamental reforms to student loan policies and an end to the student debt crisis. I want to say thank you to Natalia, Sabrina, Ashley, Angel, and Gabby from our team for being here today. Really grateful to have you all here and helping to coordinate this event. We know that right now the economy is top of mind for so many Americans, and with many headlines focused on student debt, especially the headlines about collections resuming for defaulted student loans, attacks on public service loan forgiveness and income-driven repayment plans, and so much more. This summit is needed now more than ever before. We know that the student debt crisis impacts more than 42 million Americans and their families across this country. I myself have student loan debt. My sister has it. My dad has a Parent Plus loan. So we know it's a multi-generational issue. And I know that many of you are also impacted by this debt, whether it's you or a loved one. So we want to bring you up to speed on the most up-to-date information. Now, before we jump into things, I do want to make a few quick reminders and comments here. Here on Zoom, you can use the Q&A function to ask your questions. Our team is going to do our best to answer as many questions as possible. We are going to do our best, but we recognize that there will be many questions, so please be patient with us. Any information that is shared on today's clinic, today, April 24th, 2025, pertains to the current guidelines and rules, and the information is subject to change. Now, as we said, this information is changing on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, so it really does change. And so what you're hearing today pertains to today's guidelines. And one question that we've been receiving already ahead of time, there is going to be a recording of the event provided 24 hours later for anyone who has registered. So you will receive a recording. You will receive that in your inbox tomorrow via an email from Zoom. So keep an eye out for that as well. All right. So with that in mind, we want to jump into some federal updates. So I'll kick things off by introducing our president here at SDCC, Natalia Abrams, who founded SDCC 13 years ago. Thank you so much for being here, Natalia.
Thank you, Sabrina, and for being our fearless executive director.
Well, great. As I said, Natalia, there's a lot of federal updates
Yes.
that are taking place right now. So why don't you kick us off on what is going on with the changes at the Department of Education and the multiple executive orders that we're seeing?
Absolutely. And we just know a lot has happened. A lot of you join us monthly for workshops. And every week, every day, we are seeing changes. I will say on this first slide, what we're going to talk about hasn't created a direct change to borrowers quite yet. And so that's really important, especially when we're talking about the changes at the Department of Education. So you've probably heard there was an executive order and a signing ceremony to dismantle the Department of Education. No change as of today to your student loan or who you're paying. There was also an executive order to limit the access for people, mostly employers, to be able to provide public service loan forgiveness for borrowers. That is going through a negotiated rulemaking process, which we're going to talk more in depth about it in a few minutes. But again, nothing has changed. If you have PSLF and you're working towards your credits, that has not been taken away from you. And we expect this to be a lengthy process that will inevitably be challenged. So this is a watch this space. We're going to give you an opportunity to make comment or to show you how to make comment for the negotiated rulemaking process. But as a borrower, it's important to know that nothing's been impacted with your loans. I will say this last point of the 50% reduction in workforce, that has impacted borrowers because we have seen the majority of the folks at the Office of the Ombudsman, which was when you submitted a complaint, when something went wrong with your student loan, so many of those people were laid off, potentially illegally laid off, and aren't there to help us out and help us at Student Debt Crisis Center, our partner organizations, and you as borrowers. So that has been a really unfortunate turn of events. All of this has been unfortunate. It's definitely alarming to get these different announcements every other day when it comes to to the Department of Education. But as borrowers, you unfortunately, if the department were to go away, you would still have your student loan. I'll just add in one of the lower points, Sabrina, that after they they tried to dismantle the Department of Ed, there was a comment made by President Trump to move the student loan portfolio to the Small Business Administration. Again, that hasn't happened, and it's very clear that they would need an act of Congress in order to do that, to move the loans from the Department of Education to Treasury or the Small Business Administration. So the Department of Education still holds your loans if you have federal loans, and unfortunately, you still have to make payments. But I know, Sabrina, it's been very hard for people to make payments or to know what's going on. Do you want to talk a little bit about the processing issues that we've been seeing?
Yeah, I think folks have already been reaching out ahead of time and talking about how they've submitted applications for income-driven repayment plans, but they haven't seen that process yet. So we are seeing a major backlog. We're seeing processing delays. Processing is actually paused right now for income-driven repayment plan applications. We've heard that it will come back online around May 10th, the middle of May. But we will keep an eye out for that. And we anticipate that there will still be that backlog there for folks. So it is taking a long time. We will cover what that process looks like later on in our webinar. But that is something that is important for folks to be aware of. And so just keep that in mind as we talk about submitting applications and what that process looks like. But I really want us to get to the news that we've been hearing this week on default and default collections resuming. So, Natalia, what does that mean for folks right now? What is happening with default collections?
Oh, yeah. So this is probably the worst news that we've heard in a while, and definitely in the context of the broader economy and how we're all just getting hit, whether it be groceries or those of us that are lucky to have money in the stock market. Everyone is seeing an impact in the past few months. And now, after 5 years of being turned off through the pandemic and longer, we are seeing that it was announced earlier this week that default collections will resume on May 5th. And borrowers will start to be notified ASAP, those who are in default. So that's really important to note, that this impacts people that were in default during the pandemic, or if you were one of the unfortunate people that were not able to, that did not get the payment pause because you had a commercially held FFEL loan. I know this is kind of gets confusing, but there were about 9 million people that weren't on pause and could have fallen into default. This could be you. But if you are on the Save Forbearance, this is not you. If you have not made a payment since the on-ramp, this is not you yet. So that's just important to know. But the Department of Education and the federal government will and can garnish your wages, can take your tax return. It's just so unfortunate. I can't stress that enough.
Right.
Sabrina, you want to talk a little bit about what delinquency and default is?
Yeah, so it's important to talk about what does default mean, because I think some folks might not understand it fully. So the first day after you miss your monthly payment, you are considered to be in delinquency. So within the first 89 days of delinquency, there's not much change there. You'll get the past due notice, but on the 90th day, you will then be reported to credit bureaus. So you can see your credit tank, you'll see that reflected. Now, if you continue to miss payments past the 90 days up to 270 days, which is about 9 months, um, that is when you are considered to be in default. So once you are in default, that's when these consequences are then able to begin of garnishments and seizing of tax returns and federal benefits. So that is what folks need to be aware of. What later on today, walk folks through what it looks like on studentaid.gov and where you can see the status of your loans. That will say that you're in default, or if you're not in default, it will say in repayment or forbearance or something along those lines. So we'll walk you through how to determine whether or not you are in default. But as Natalia said, if you were in the payment pause, if you haven't made a payment since September or October of last year, you are most likely in delinquency and late stage delinquency, essentially approaching default. So you might have seen your credit score lower or impacts that way. That could be you. And so this is really important to keep in mind. So with all of that, Natalia, if someone is in default and they're here today, what can they do to bring their loans back into good standing?
There are a few things, and it's a real case by case basis, but you can apply for loan consolidation, and that application is up and available. That it was one of the applications that had been taken down previously, but you can apply for the loan consolidation. It probably won't happen in time for May 5th, but it's the best way to safeguard yourself, right? If you want to try to get out of it. The other thing is default loan rehabilitation. This isn't an easy process. Whenever we have to tell you to call your loan servicer, we feel bad about it. We know that it can be hours and hours of wait times. It can be hours on the phone. They will want to go through all of, your financial payments, but you can feasibly have a payment as low as $5 per month. And if you make that payment for 9 months, they give you 10 months to make 9 months of payment, then you can be put back into good standing. At that point, you absolutely should enroll in an income-driven repayment program so you don't fall into default again. But that is the best way to avoid, ongoing wage garnishment and to get out of default, as if you're concerned the way we are about this week's announcement.
Well, I appreciate you giving us that overview of default collections, and I know we have a lot more to cover. So I'm going to toss it back to you, Natalia, to introduce our special guest for the day.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sabrina. And I'm very excited to have someone that we've worked with many times before at Student Debt Crisis Center, Eleanor Bloom, Special Assistant Attorney General for Economic Justice at the California Department of Justice. Eleanor serves as the senior advisor on economic justice, leading Attorney General Bonta's work. If you aren't aware, because you're calling in nationally, Attorney General Rob Bonta is our great Attorney General here in California. She works on antitrust, consumer protections, corporate securities, technology, and cybersecurity. Previously, she served as counsel at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, that was a wonderful resource and protector for student loan borrowers, providing legal and policy guidance on consumer protection matters, and as a director at the Department of Defense, overseeing implementations of new regulations to protect our military families from abusive lending. Eleanor attended Wellesley College and UC Berkeley School of Law and is a recipient of the Office of the Secretary of Defense Award for Excellence. We are so honored to have you here today, Ellie. Please give us some hope with what's going on for student loan borrowers.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Natalia and Sabrina. It is great to be with you all today. The work of Student Debt Crisis is phenomenal, and you've really been a great partner over the last 8 years in some good times vis-a-vis the federal government and some bad times vis-a-vis the federal government, and the work of the states there and the states in partnership with our advocates and civil society has been really important. We know that there's a long arc to this fight, and so continuing to gather to be with you here to keep that focus remains really important. Even more important now than perhaps when we have a more reliable partner at the federal level. So thank you so much for having me here today. And for everybody who is joining us, thank you for the focus and determination and ferocity that you all continue to bring to the work of addressing the student debt crisis. I think the gravity and the instability of the situation at hand cannot be overstated. Voters screamed at the voting booth that they want a lower cost of living, and now they're getting a higher cost of living to the tune of thousands of dollars each year. As so many of you on the call today know, that is having a very real impact. It is an impact on our own household budgets, on our economic projections, and our ability to make choices as families in the United States right now. And that higher cost of living and that economic chaos is coming from the extraordinarily harmful and also callous, but also just economically insane approach to federal student loans, from cutting AmeriCorps, firing federal workers, and the ripple effects that will have in every community across the country, from the tariffs, from gutting the agencies that safeguard our economy and the people that drive it. The negative impact, and I'm going to get to hope, but first I want to really underscore the situation we find ourselves in. The negative impact of mismanaging the federal student loan market cannot be overstated. The ballooning debt, garnishment of wages and tax refunds and Social Security payments, the inability to tend to the rest of one's economic life, whether that is paying for childcare, or housing, finishing school, or getting a better job, those are very real. And President Trump owns the student debt crisis. We know how much work the CFPB and the Department of Education did during things like servicing transfers, cleaning up PSLF and return to repayment. And now the Trump administration has effectively shut down anybody who can help people deal with a broken system. The states will do our best to pick up the slack. And this coalition has helped to build better laws and better institutions at the state level over the past 8 years to be able to do so. But we should be abundantly clear that many people will be hurt by Donald Trump's giveaway to the student loan industry. That this economic crisis we have right now is his. And while it's not surprising that we're here, it is still shocking and appalling, and we can't lose sight of that. Even as we move toward hope, we move toward action, we cannot lose sight of the situation in which we find ourselves, and we cannot become complacent, as I know nobody here today will be. We cannot turn a blind eye to what's really happening. Right now, the foundational tenet of American democracy is under attack. So we've got to pay attention. We've got to stay engaged. We've got to stay enraged at the flagrant abuse of power and disregard for the law, disregard for people's economic well-being. This coalition made tremendous progress over the past 15 years in reforming federal student loans, in reshaping the public discourse around student debt and how we tackle it, and in building the institutions to take on a crisis and bringing really smart, thoughtful solutions to bear. So as chaotic as this moment is, and as much as we have a man-made crisis with excruciatingly real consequences for people, I am also hopeful. I share Natalia's hope and desire to move forward. I'm hopeful because we know that people need real solutions and we can offer it. Our constituencies say that their number one concern is the economy and being able to afford living in this country. We need to make groceries, gas, healthcare, and housing more affordable for hardworking families. We need to make it easier for people to pursue higher education and graduate with job offers, not buried under a mountain of debt. And when they do have that debt, to make that debt possible. Not necessarily easy, though if we could, that would be great, but even possible to repay. And we need to make sure that workers have career stability and opportunity within a dynamic economy. I'm hopeful because I believe that we can rise to this moment. We are already running hard. We are taking on President Trump when he breaks the law, moving quickly to respond and winning. And we have a strong team among the attorneys general holding the line on keeping President Trump within his lawful field of play. We have very strong partnerships. And among the partners and advocates who are in this fight with us. The harms are immediate, but the fight here, the one that we are all in now, is a very long one, as you all know so well. I talked about the laws and the institutions that we have built over the last 15 years, the last 8 years at the state level. We need to stay in it. We need to hold fast to this partnership, to the commitments that we have, and just keep going. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you all today and for taking the time today in community here to feed that fight. Sabrina, I'm going to hand it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. We really appreciate you, the work that your office is doing to fight for Californians, for student loan borrowers, and for folks across the country. We are so grateful to be in partnership with you. So thank you for taking time out of your very busy day to be here with us today. All right. Well, we are so grateful for Ellie and what the AG's office is doing, but we also have a few more special guests. And so I'm going to introduce our next speaker here. If we can go to the next slide, we are going to start discussing actions that you can take to advocate for yourself. So with that in mind, today we have Aisa Conchola Banez, who is the Policy Director at the Student Borrower Protection Center. She brings a decade of experience in Congress, executive agencies, and advocacy, working to advance policy solutions to improve the lives of workers and families and create a more just and equitable society. Prior to joining SBPC, she served as Deputy Chief of Staff and Legislative Director for Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley in the 7th Congressional District in Massachusetts, where she led the Congresswoman's policy work and including efforts to protect borrowers and make student loan debt cancellation a reality. Previously, Aisa led outreach and engagement efforts for the Office for Students and Young Consumers at the CFPB. Thank you so much, Aisa, for joining us today. I know that you all have a wonderful casework tool that I'm excited to hear more about today. So I'll toss it over to you to walk folks through what they can do and how to advocate for themselves.
Thank you so much, Sabrina and Natalia and the SDCC team for the invite to be here with you all this morning and this afternoon, and also just for the opportunity to kind of speak through or to talk through one of the resources that the Student Borrower Protection Center has put together. Just to kind of give a little bit of background here, we know that there has been so much uncertainty and confusion, especially, broadly around the federal government, just writ large, but in particular with student loans. And we have continued to get questions from borrowers on tangible things that they can do, and places they can go to get help and assistance and get answers. As Natalia had mentioned, we have seen massive reductions in force, mass firings at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which historically would have been the agency where borrowers could submit complaints and request help and assist and get the assistance that they need in kind of getting answers from their servicers and rectifying errors on their student loans records or on their credit report, et cetera. And ultimately, the CFPB has now essentially been gutted, and a lot of the work that they have been doing has been essentially halted. At the Department of Education, we've also seen mass firings amongst the department, including teams that were doing work directly supporting student loan borrowers who were trying to get issues solved with their student loan servicers or were having issues with their student loans. And so in a world where we might not be able to rely in the same way that we would have in the past on a functioning Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and a functioning ombudsman's team within the Department of Education, our team at the Student Borrower Protection Center wanted to, we were trying to think creatively about what other tools folks could have at their disposal. And that ultimately informed our work on the Protect Borrowers Congressional Casework tool. So you can find this tool on our website, and I know my friends on SDCC have included this on the chat here with the formal link. But one area, this is intended to really kind of help borrowers walk through the process of submitting requests for constituent casework assistance. This is a very little known or less known constituent assistance tool that folks know about, especially within the student loan space. I think predominantly folks who are aware of congressional casework as an option or as a service primarily relate to folks who are having issues with Social Security or having issues with their passport, or kind of just other issues with federal agencies. And so it was our goal to really kind of inform borrowers that if you are having an issue with your federal student loans and an issue with getting answers from the Department of Education with regards to your federal student loans, that casework is also a tool available to you. And so the casework tool is really intended to kind of walk through the process of submitting a casework assistance request. But so, you know, as I mentioned, little known resource for folks, and offices, congressional offices have entire teams that are dedicated to supporting constituents who are having issues with federal agencies. There are some requirements that we can kind of go through in further slides, but you know, this is a resource, and we really encourage borrowers to reach out to their members of Congress and request assistance through this, and really kind of go on the offense to protect themselves amidst this really significant time of uncertainty. So problems, examples of issues that borrowers might be experiencing that could potentially qualify for an area where a constituent caseworker might be able to assist is, you know, if you are having challenges accessing income-driven repayment. Sabrina at the top had mentioned, you know, thankfully, the Department of Education has restored the IDR application online, but processing remains halted. And we do know that folks are really kind of struggling to kind of get status updates on what's going on with their application, or even being able to figure out how to submit their application. So challenges accessing IDR, if you are a defaulted borrower and are trying to navigate or having difficulties navigate the process of loan rehabilitation, these are perfect categories where, you know, casework could come in and help support you as you are trying to get answers on these issues. Challenges reaching your student loan servicer, or excessively long wait times. If you are dealing with lost paperwork or inaccurate information from your servicer, incorrect information on a credit report related to your federal student loans, including loans that have already been paid off. We have been hearing from folks that are seeing outdated or just blatantly incorrect information that is being reported to on their credit report on loans that had already been canceled. And then also this includes, you know, issues filing an application for a borrower defense to repayment. So this is specifically a program that's intended to provide relief to folks who were defrauded by their school or misled by their school. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, you know, the casework tool is intended to kind of walk through the process of navigating this process and submitting a constituent casework request with your member of Congress. So there, you know, at the top right, you will see kind of a snapshot of the tool itself. It does include links to help find your representative or senator's website. So directly below so on the right-hand side, right bottom hand side, you will see the link for house.gov, and this will prompt you to include your zip code, and that will help direct you to your member of Congress. So if you do not know who your member of Congress is, that is fine. The casework tool will help you navigate to both the House website as well as the United States Senate website, where you could either plug in your zip code, and then on the Senate side, you will plug in the state in which you reside, and then the two senators will prop up from there. And then you can go directly to your representative's website from those house.gov/senate.gov websites that will direct you accordingly. Next slide, please. And then this is where things can get, this is where depending on who your member of Congress is and where you reside, this is where the process can differ. So taking a step back, you know, the casework process, every single office in the House and in the Senate does provide a certain extent of constituent casework, but each member and each senator will have this information displayed in a different way on their respective websites. So that is just something to kind of keep in mind. The tool itself is really intended to, again, walk you through how to navigate this process and navigate what some of those differences could look like. So here I just included some snapshots of what the website of my member of Congress, Congresswoman Norma Torres out of Southern California. So it's snapshotted a couple of her kind of screenshots from her website. But all members will kind of refer to this assistance in a few different variety of ways. So when you go onto your representative's website, usually they'll have a drop-down menu or will have options. And this will include like services or get help. And so you'll kind of hover over those drop-down menus and look for certain keywords. This could include constituent services. It could include casework. It could also just say get help with the federal agency. Those are some of the buzzwords to kind of keep an eye out for when you are looking for where to go to get casework help. So that you will see here on the top right that that's kind of what the drop-down menu, my representative has help with a federal agency. So clicking on that, and then you will get prompted to a new page that will kind of outline all of their casework, the types of casework that they provide, as well as information that you need to know as you are submitting a casework request. Now, like I said at the top, I think it is less common for student loan borrowers to utilize casework to get help. I think that that does not mean that an office cannot help you if they don't list student loans as a specific area in which they provide constituent assistance. I think this is largely just because there have been other agencies in place where borrowers can get more rapid help in the past. With those agencies no longer being available as much to borrowers, casework can still help. And so I'm just stressing this because if you do not see student loans listed as part of one of the examples of casework, do not be, don't take that as, I can't get help or I can't request help from my member of Congress. So keep that in mind as well. And then once you get to that page, when you are submitting casework, there are going to be certain things that an office will want to make sure that you have ready. So keep all of your relevant information, student loan records, as well as any back and forth correspondence, either with a credit bureau or with your student loan servicer, so that you can compile all of that information when you are submitting your casework request. And then another piece to keep in mind is that in order to get any kind of casework help, the law requires that members of Congress have a signed privacy release form so that constituents are consenting to this office taking action on your behalf and getting access to any personal files or information that you might be including in your casework assistance form. Next slide, please. So for my Congresswoman, right after the kind of overview of what casework offerings their office provides, you kind of get into the next page, which is kind of a portal in which this is where you are going to need to prove that your residence is within the confines of this member's district. And then once you kind of go through that process, and it's confirmed that you are indeed a constituent, you kind of submit all of the information that you are trying to kind of notify the caseworkers of and want to include within the constituent request form, et cetera. So can we actually go back to the last slide? Okay, so, oh, sorry, thank you. For my member of Congress specifically, she does provide the option to sign the privacy release form via online. This will differ from office to office. There are some offices that will require you to sign it and fax it in or sign it and mail it in. So just keep that in mind. But I do think it's becoming more common for folks to be able to fill out and sign this privacy release form online before you submit the request. Okay, now to the next slide. Next one. So helpful reminders. As I had mentioned, there will be a portion of the casework process where you do have to prove that you are a constituent of the district. This is something that is required across the board. I do think there are instances where an office will do casework if you are outside of the district, but we are really stressing that folks should just reach out to their own members of Congress, their senators, to ensure that that does not act as like a barrier or any kind of a roadblock to getting the relief that folks need. As a reminder, your issue must involve a federal agency. That is what provides the office the authority and jurisdiction to act on your behalf, as if it is with regards to a federal agency, which obviously includes federal student loans. These are loans that are owned by ED. And even if they are serviced by a private company. So all of, as we know here, many of our, well, all of the student loans are serviced by contractors, private, nonprofit, servicing companies that essentially help manage the day-to-day for borrowers as they are repaying their loans. But even if you have a servicer and are having an issue with the servicer, they are a contractor of the federal government and therefore is still related to the Department of Education and is still related to a federal agency. Your issue must not deal with a state or a local agency because congressional offices just won't be able to act on your behalf in the same way. And then if you are having issues with private student loans, offices will not be able to help in the same way that they would with regards to a federal student loan. So keep those things in mind. Your case must also not involve a pending court action, because again, in terms of just the jurisdiction and what offices have the purview of engaging in on your behalf, there are some limitations there. And then the last and final reminder is please make sure that you sign your Privacy Act waiver so that the office can actually start the process of going through your information that you submitted and getting more information if they need it. So that is an overview of the tool. We really hope that it helps kind of guide you as you navigate this process. And I think that's it. So happy to answer any questions. And with that, back to you, Sabrina.
Thank you so much, Aisha. We really appreciate you joining us today. This is a very helpful tool, folks. I encourage folks to take advantage of it, submit it. It's really important. We understand that some folks have tried calling their servicer. They haven't gotten anyone on the phone. They've tried calling federal student aid and haven't gotten anyone on the phone. So this might be a way for your state lawmakers to provide you support. And with that in mind, we actually do have someone here today. We have Fladiana Lopez, who is from West Michigan and is a caseworker for U.S. Senator Elissa Slotkin's constituent services team. As a caseworker, Fladiana conducts congressional inquiries on behalf of constituents to the Department of Education, Small Business Administration, Office of Personnel Management, and any other agencies that constituents need support from. So, Fladiana, thank you so much for being here today. We have over 600 folks with us live right now, and I've seen a couple of questions here in the Q&A, so I'd love to hear more from you about what you do in constituent services, as well as do you have any insight into what folks can do if their representatives might not be willing to support them, if there's any other places that folks should be looking at. But again, just thank you for being here, and I'll kick it over to you to cover those.
Yeah, thanks, Sabrina. First of all, welcome everyone. Can't see you, but glad that you're on here and everything. And thank you to everyone for inviting me to discuss this. Honestly, like this is a service that most people do not know of. I highly encourage it that you use it. So like I said, I am a caseworker under U.S. Senator Elissa Slotkin. So what I do is have a casework portfolio of a whole bunch of federal agencies. So what we end up doing is we connect with constituents and constituents connect with us. They're like, hey, I need help. I haven't heard back from the Department of Ed concerning my payment, like recount and stuff like that. That is something that people can look into and everything and see what's going on. So I think a common misconception for congressional liaisons is that most people believe that we are the deciding factor, like we're going to provide the final decision. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We're just liaisons. So we're just relaying the message to and from agency and the constituent. So I would want to say that first and foremost, but there's also the idea of there are people that are like, I contacted my elected official. They have not been answering me and everything. My advice, if the case that you're trying to contact your member of Congress and everything, and they're not responding to you, contact your senator, contact their team and everything. They have a very robust team that happens throughout the state. And I think it's also really important because I know some people are like, well, if the Department of Ed is not answering me, what would make a difference if I reached out to this office? Um, I would like to point out that one of the biggest reasons is because these people, these caseworkers or constituent service representatives, have been in this position longer than the elected official in most cases. They have the experience, they know what's going on within different departments. I know some people that have been in so many different members' office, but they have that experience. They have the ability to look into the situation. And some people are able to even expand and say, yeah, you know what? I actually work in this kind of area and everything. Let me see if I can find referrals. Um, so, like was said before, we cannot do any state or local referrals or, I mean, sorry, state or local issues and stuff. My best recommendations, contact your state representative, your local officials. This can be found on like, I want to say, elected officials government, the US government website. It allows you like all your elected officials and everything, but always point out like, okay, if I have an issue with this kind of department, I need to go to that direct office. In the case that you bring it into a federal office because you're just like, I just don't know. I don't know who is this and everything. We can help you out. We're like, okay, you know what? This is an issue that we can't really provide more like guidance on. Let me connect you to our other person. Um, Additionally, I would also say in the case that you're not able to get like any response from your U.S. congressperson, your U.S. senator, try to find the member that's closest to you. One of the biggest things is that part of the reason it is more like out of respect, like, you know, that's their constituent, let them help them out and everything, but also it's the location of the position. So most people are like, "Ah, I don't want to help you because you're across the state. Like, what if I need to talk to you and come in person?" It makes it unable, like inaccessible to the constituent. Um, and then additionally, I will also add that if you're contacting your elected officials, it's really important to know that the office, like all federal offices, have the same contact. So if you send a request to your member of Congress and then you send it to your senator, it's really important that only one of them works on the case. Because if you have two people just colliding in on this inquiry and everything, the Department of Ed is going to get confused. They're going to try to say, oh, like this is going to make processing slower and everything because you have two people that are asking me for the same thing. Try to like, I don't know, I guess like engage with that office and say, hey, never mind. Looks like I got some support with a different office. However, I understand people are busy and that's just not in the back of your mind. So always just understand that, have that in the back of your head and stuff. I know that with caseworkers, especially my team, when we have someone like saying, I contacted the governor, contacted the state senator, the senator, um, congressperson, everyone. We're like, okay, cool. Like, first of all, thank you for providing the names because we can connect with them and say, hey, did you open a case? Or he was telling us that he was not able to resolve the issue with your office. What can you provide to us? So there's always that constant communication. Like if you have a case on the south side of the state and everything, more than likely the person in the north knows about it and everything. So I want to just give you a quick breakdown how caseworkers like process these casework inquiries. So first thing is just the initial contact. It's someone kind of reaching out and saying like, I just need some help and everything with the federal agency. We usually send that over email. Our office can do a digital signature, but I do know that some people don't have that digital signature. And then we can do it by email, we can do it by over US mail and stuff. But once we get that information, what we would do is send over a privacy release form. This is really just a form, like said before, that it just lets us act on your behalf. I do want to note that any information that you provide on this privacy release form will be shared to the agency. So if there's something that you're saying like, I don't know, something that you don't want them to know, make sure you remember that because this is going to be sent to many different people. And a common issue that I have with some people is that they don't ever actually explain what they need for the department. they would say, oh, I'm having issues with my loans and stuff. I need to figure out like a status up there or something. Be specific in your request. Say, I am looking into my IDR repayment program. It has stopped processing, or I want to remove the forbearance status so I can continue my payments towards public service loan forgiveness. It's really important only because for one, it helps us out in saying like, okay, they're all good. Let's just send this inquiry. And then for two, Department Ed won't come around and say like, oh, like here's a very generic response. I want to be able to give you a direct solution to the problem that you're having. So make sure you define that issue. Um, and then, so once we have that form and everything, we're like, yep, you're all set. We send it over to our congressional liaison. They look over the information and first they confirm, yes, we received it, we're on this. And then after a few weeks, they kind of turn around and say, hey, we're going to refer this case to FSA, or we're going to refer it to their service loaner, etc. Once that's happened, there is a not very good time frame on when you can receive a solution, especially during the process right now. But I would say that the Department of Education is very big on sending any updates or responses to the borrower before our office. So always try to keep your caseworker updated if you receive like a big change or something like that, or you got a response, only because, like I said, they don't really send us updates. They only send us the final resolution. So I really rely on my constituents to connect with me so I can reach out and say, hey, we still haven't received a response, what's going on and stuff like that. And then that kind of gets into the monitoring the inquiry. We're just letting people know what's going on. And then finally, an agency resolution would happen. In the case that you're like, this this isn't what I was asking for, go right back around, connect with us, and we will get a whole different inquiry going. And then finally, constituent service is your tax dollars. Like you put in money into this. This is not like most people would say it's free, but it isn't. Like this is your tax dollars at work. So definitely contact your elected official. I know some people are like, well, I don't want to contact them. That's why they're there. That's why we're here. We're at the service of the people. And it's a really important thing that people reach out to us, especially during these times. But yeah, I'm gonna just quickly wrap that up and everything. So certainly my contact information is on this slide and everything. And I'm sure Sabrina will share it out to you guys. If you have any like advice or you want to like, how should I approach my elected official, please reach out. However, if you don't live in Michigan, please don't send any casework because I don't want to change up the states and everything, but certainly reach out if you need anything else.
Thank you so much, Fladiana. We really appreciate your time and expertise here. And again, encourage folks to reach out to your offices. There are real live people working there. It's not just an email that you're sending it to. Folks like Fladiana are working, you know, long hours to help folks. And so, Fladiana, we really appreciate you joining us today and all the work that you are doing. And with that in mind, I know that a lot of folks have been voicing concern about different issues that you all are hearing, concerns about PSLF, IDR plans under attack, things of that nature. And so we want to give you an opportunity to take action right now. So with that in mind, I'm going to toss it over to my colleague, Sabrina Ashley, who is the Special Projects and Free the Degree Director here at Student Debt Crisis Center, to walk you through some actionable items that you can take right now and today. Sabrina?
Yeah, thank you. And hello, everyone. It's so incredible to see the over, like Sabrina said, 600 people here. So yeah, as we've been talking about through this whole webinar so far, there have been some questions surrounding public service loan forgiveness and what could happen to income-driven repayment plans. And Natalia mentioned that previously there was a executive order aimed at public service loan forgiveness and who could be a qualifying employer and potentially who could qualify for the forgiveness program. And while that is not in effect yet, there is this negotiated rulemaking process that is underway, and it could be a way to kind of replace that executive order to further revise this public service loan forgiveness, income-driven repayment plans, and the opportunity for forgiveness, which would be not great for borrowers. So the negotiated rulemaking process is called NEGREG. It's a process that's used to essentially create rules and regulations, and it uses stakeholder voices and opinions while creating those rules. So ideally, we would want folks who are borrowers, students, community members, people who really benefit from public service loan forgiveness and income-driven repayment plans. Right now, Ed does want to revise who qualifies for PSLF. Its main goal is to restrict organizations from being a qualifying PSLF employer, and to likely get rid of the forgiveness aspect through the income contingent repayment and the pay-as-you-earn repayment plans. And it's important to note here that ICR and pay are specifically being addressed in this case. So this is, more negative news, but here's what you can do right now. And thank you, Angel, for submitting it already in the chat. You can make a public comment. It's now open. You can submit your comment through our letter send tool. We've pre-populated a letter. Feel free to edit that, put in your personal story. It's really important that you all and anyone, whether you have student debt, whether you have family members or friends who are in the student debt system, or if you're just a community member looking for ways to help out your community, we're all impacted by this issue. Comments that are submitted through the letter tool will go straight to the Federal Register. Really cool technology there. And as I said, anyone can submit a comment, and you should submit a comment. You don't have to have student debt to make your voice heard. So once again, you can find that link in the chat. Go ahead and submit your comment, and I'm going to go ahead and toss it back to Natalia.
Thank you, Sabrina. And thank you to everyone who just shared in this section. There's so much. We know there's a ton of uncertainty right now, but there is a lot of options and a lot of tools like the casework tool, or being able to submit through NEGREG, seeing Flatlania, just knowing that there are real human beings, as Sabrina said, behind submitting that casework tool. So we are trying to give you as many options as you can right now, because we know borrowers are feeling stuck, not being able to go to the Department of Education. The other, so we're going to pivot a little now to what's going on at the state level. And one of the reasons we really want to highlight state level advocacy is that this is where we're seeing things get done, where we might not be seeing things get done for student loan borrowers at the federal level. Just like hearing from Ellie and AG and Attorney General Bonta's office, where attorney generals are doing great work to protect borrowers, we are also seeing that at the state level. So I'm super honored to introduce our first guest from California, Samantha Singh. Samantha Singh works with Next Gen California in education policy, early childhood, K through 12, and higher education policy at Next Gen California. Their work includes advocating for policies and programs that promote access and equity and this student success at every stage of their educational career. Samantha joined Next Gen after a stint at the California State Assembly, working on a wide range of issues for several different elected officials. Before moving to Sacramento, Samantha came from the nonprofit sector, teaching, mentoring, tutoring low income, and at Promise Youth throughout the Bay Area. She is the proud daughter of immigrants and a first-generation college student, and the first in her family to hold a master's degree in education from Lesley University, and she holds her undergraduate degree from UC Berkeley, another UC student. Samantha, or Sam, we work together all the time in Coalition. So wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Natalia. Thanks for that. And again, thanks to everyone for coming today to talk about these pressing issues that are really impacting everyone in their everyday lives. So as Natalia mentioned, from Next Gen California, we're a multi-issue advocacy organization based in Sacramento, California, working on a couple different issues, but I focus on education and higher education specifically. So I'll be focusing on that today. We are very proud to do our work in strong coalition with many partners that you've heard from today already, especially Student Debt Crisis Center. And together we work as the Campaign for California Borrowers' Rights Coalition, a statewide California coalition of diverse organizations across the state working to help borrowers with their student debt so that everyone can see a future free of that debt one day. So check us out. That's our website right there at the top. And this year we are focused on a bill that will address another kind of education related debt, which is probably going to be on top of student loan debt that students face. This is called institutional debt. So this is anytime a student will owe something directly to their campus. So not your traditional student loans, but again, most likely on top of that. And because of having this kind of institutional debt, students are seeing like being forced to drop out of college, having to pay off this debt. Some of the other harmful debt collection practices that our institutions do is go to third-party debt collectors, possibly ruining a credit score for a student that hasn't even graduated yet. So we're very proud to work on AB 850 with Assemblymember Pacheco to lift educational barriers, kind of stop those or address those debt collection practices that harm students, doesn't help out our institutions. We established some basic consumer protections for students, just like any other financial entity that is dealing with debt and debt collections. We believe our schools should be held to those kind of same standards and increases transparency on this growing shadow debt. We don't have a lot of data on this. It seems very straightforward that the state should be collecting consistent data on this, so we know exactly how much our students are owing to our public colleges and universities. And we're very happy to report that the bill just passed the Assembly Higher Education Committee the other day, 6-1, and we now head to an Assembly Appropriations Committee to talk about the fiscal aspects of the bill. So stay tuned, watch out for this bill, and if you can at all, help us out to address the shadow debt. So that we can stop this issue from growing larger. Some other bills that we just wanted to mention today that to be on your radar to see what's California doing for borrowers is AB 866 by Assemblymember Ortega. It really strengthens what we have in California, our State Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, or DFPI. They are our state I guess equivalent to the federal CFPB, and so they fight for our borrowers here in California. This law would strengthen some of the consumer protection laws that DFPI currently have at their disposal to make sure that those apply to out-of-state servicers like MOHELA. And that bill is on its way to its second policy committee this coming Monday in Assembly Banking and Finance Committee, so it is working its way through the process. And then AB 681, the Assemblymember Elawari, helps out our undocumented students. So in California, we do have the option of California Dream Loans. Again, for those students who cannot access traditional federal student loans, we do have this a California option, and this bill will help increase the limits for that, since especially those students are facing a different kind of attack from this federal administration. So this way we make sure that these students are going to get some more options to access higher education. So a lot more happening in California, but those are the top that we wanted to highlight. And then in California, like I mentioned, we do have that DFPI department here that is reinforcing a student borrower bill of rights that we were happy to be part of. Again, the coalition helped pass here in California. So California borrowers enjoy, the stronger consumer protections than perhaps other states, and definitely stronger than the federal government. And so if you are here in California and you're having issues like you've heard from our partners and at the federal level, you also have the option of submitting your complaints to the department so they can investigate and help you out as much as they can as well. So you have someone else on your side. And also this way they can track who the bad actors are and go after them in the state so that they're doing business as they should be. And DFPI has had success in this already, but they need to hear from you. I know Student Debt Crisis Center does a lot to help you out one-on-one in case you need more help or you want to, get another thought partner in what's happening with your student loans. We do have the Student Loan Empowerment Network under DFPI. You can go there and get connected with more resources if that's something that you are interested in. And also under the DFPI, there is a student loan ombudsperson, Selena Damian. We've done a lot of work with her. I'm sure many of you have heard from her before, and she can also help you out with any of your questions. Go ahead and fill out that form and she'll get in contact with you. So a lot happening in California, but that's a snapshot and the highlights. And thank you again, Natalia and others for having us on here.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. You're just trying to provide as many options and opportunities for borrowers to submit complaints and get help. As you can see, there's, in California, we have a great ombudsperson, Selena Damian. You may have an ombudsperson in your state. There are many, and we're going to hear from Krista in Connecticut shortly, but thank you so much, Sam. And we are 1 hour down. We are just providing you lots of resources right now. And shortly, in just a few minutes, we're going to get into our student loan workshop, which will be able to help you manage your student loan debt. So just stay with us. But we have Krista Estrada Perez, a community organizer and executive director at the Student Loan Fund. She builds power with with Connecticut borrowers to demand national student debt cancellation. We're with you on that, Krista. And advanced state-based solutions to mitigate the crisis. Krista is a first-generation college graduate with over $70,000 in student debt herself. She organizes along those who are most impacted by these predatory practices and the predatory higher education financing systems. We've worked hand in hand with Student Loan Fund and really honored to have you here, Krista, to share what's going on in Connecticut.
Thank you, Natalia, for having us. And I'm so excited to be here representing SLF. I'm honored to be here. I recognize that this is a really difficult time for a lot of borrowers. It's a difficult time for folks in their own lived experiences. It's a difficult time for the movement because we're seeing a backsliding into a lot of the gains that we've made. So I wanted to start with that and honor that. But we also recognize that we have to continue to organize and to build power to address the student debt crises because we know that collectively it is collective power that has gotten us this far, and it'll all continue to be collective power that will get us through it. And so part of our relationship here is to think about, we know that the student debt cancellation is a national fight that we have to have, right? Part of that is getting our Connecticut delegation to see the power and the necessity of student debt cancellation in free state and community colleges for us. But it also means that there's things that our states could do to mitigate some of the harm that we're seeing, because in the absence of institutional support at the federal level in that cancellation, that there's a responsibility of our states to be able to step in where they can to mitigate some of the harm. So a little bit about us. We are a borrower-led grassroots organization. We're fighting for racial and economic justice. We are committed to restructuring the predatory lending systems that are impacting us, our families, and our communities. We work to cancel student debt. We are fighting to make colleges and universities in Connecticut free for all. And we fight for the rights of student loan borrowers to have access to free, reliable resources that create and advance student borrowers' economic security. And that's really important for us, right? Because we see that as a three-pronged approach. And that also includes being in coalition and partnership with national partners like the SDCC, SVPC, and other folks. So very happy to be here. We wanted to share a little bit of like the journey that we've had as an organization and the work that we've done and some of our wins, and then talk to you a little bit about what we are doing now as we are confronting this new era in the fight. So what we have done, we secured funding for a full-time student loan ombudsperson to support the Connecticut's 500,000 borrowers. We were the first state in the nation to pass a borrower bill of rights. that included a student loan on funds person, but the state actually didn't fund the person, right, the role. So we didn't actually have one. So we organized borrowers, advocated at the legislature, and were able to finally get enough dollars in to be able to hire a student loan on funds person to support borrowers. And we recognize how important this role is needed. So Michelle Jarvis Letman is our new student loan on funds person. We're happy to have her. And we know that it was at a crucial moment that she's begun her tenure with us. And so if you're in Connecticut and you need support, in addition to all the other resources that we are providing, the summit has provided, you can reach out to us, but you can also reach out to your student loan on funds in Connecticut. And she is quick and responsive, so I know she'll definitely get back to you. If you have to file a complaint, you can do so with the banking department, which is where the student loan on funds is housed in Connecticut. We've also passed legislation requiring private lenders to register in the state. We really didn't know what private lenders were doing in the state. We didn't have data, so we created a lender registry so that they had to. We also helped pass a bill that limited transcript withholding, which is that institutional debt Sam was talking about that you owe directly to schools and institutions. We're going to keep fighting on that because the bill, it's good, it's a good start, but it isn't stopping transcript withholding in its totality. And of course, we supported the creation of a student loan reimbursement program to provide financial relief to borrowers. And if you can go to the next slide. Thank you. And so some of the things that we're fighting for. So in 2024, the General Assembly approved the development of the student loan reimbursement program, and it appropriated $6 million aimed at providing financial relief to Connecticut residents burdened with student loan debt. It went live in January of this year, and I believe the state has already provided $1 million back. So don't quote me on that. We have to have more information about that. But what we want to do is to work on making the program permanent. Right now it's a pilot program, but we want to expand, we want to make it permanent. We want to expand eligibility, and we want to make sure that they are non-taxable, at least under state law. And we think this is extremely important because as we are seeing the rates of student loan repayments increase, and some of those safety nets go away, that it is going to impact our local economy. And so we need to be able to provide some level of support for borrowers who are already struggling. We also want to stop the issue at its core, right? And so part of what we're doing is we're in coalition with Connecticut for All, and this is being led by CSU AAUP. So we've joined them to fight to expand PAT, which is the debt-free community college program, to include students enrolled in a state university within the Connecticut college system. Right now, it already exists for community colleges. We want to expand that program to CSUs, to our Connecticut State University system, so that we don't have as many students graduating with student debt. So being able to attack it from both of those fronts. Similarly, we've been engaged in relationship with other leaders to support SB 1450, which is an act concerning recruitment and retention of healthcare workers. But this is really about implementing and funding a student loan reimbursement program specifically targeted for healthcare professionals who provide services in areas that are often not provided service because either they are rural areas, working class areas, or just areas where healthcare staff are not often, where there's not a lot of healthcare staff and there's needs support in recruitment and retention. And we do these because we recognize that, like healthcare professionals, educators, all of these folks have student debt, and we are experiencing a crisis at the state level of educators, healthcare providers. And so it's a really good way, but as a state level to be able to provide that. But for us at the core is the recognition that all borrowers deserve student debt cancellation, that all borrowers deserve support of some sort, that borrowers deserve to be seen, heard, and centered in our policies at the state level, because it impacts not just the borrower, but it also impacts our local communities, our local economies, our local families, and ultimately our nation. So I am excited to be here. Thank you so much for the time. And we'll keep fighting together. And I am excited to be in coalition with you all. And I'm going to pass it on to Sabrina.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Krister. Thank you to Sam and Fladiana, Ellie, and Aisa. These are all really, really great resources, and just wow, really some proof that we are making a difference. So I think that's really incredible. So let's kick off today's workshop portion. I know tons of you are in the Q&A. That is amazing. We're working hard to get to all of your questions. Keep dropping them in there. At the end, we'll have a way for you to get your questions answered if we don't get to it. But right now we're going to launch our workshop. We're going to talk about loan types, repayment plans, getting out of default. We'll go over loan forgiveness options, and of course we'll have a Q&A section. Just another reminder, the information provided today is based on current guidance and is subject to change, and today as in April 24th, 2025. And a reminder to everyone, we are not financial counselors or attorneys. We are advocates and experts that are here to help. The next slide. Awesome. So before we get into the loan details, we're going to go over how do I protect myself with all of these recent changes to the student loan system that we've been going over. And we do have a few ways to protect yourself on this next slide here. So what you can do right now is to make sure that you know who your student loan servicer is and that you have access to your servicer account on their website. Also, to make sure that you have a studentaid.gov account. There's 2 different ones there. Also, save any communications and documentation that you've received from your servicer, and we suggest printing, downloading, screenshotting, saving all and any information that details how many public service loan forgiveness credits you have, any information about your income-driven repayment plans, credits, how close you are to forgiveness, anything there that's applicable to you. You can also consider enrolling in IBR if you qualify for it. That's income-based repayment. It is the repayment plan that is written into law, so it's technically the maybe most secure IDR plan. We don't know what's going to happen to IDR plans, and that is the unfortunate truth, but we will continue to communicate any changes there. And then just a last note, if you want to find out if you qualify for income-based repayment, you can try calling your servicer. They should be able to tell you what income-driven repayment plans you're eligible for and what your estimated payments would be on those different plans. So let's get into student loan types and servicers. This is what you'll need to understand your different options. And here we've broken down student loan types into this flow chart here. I'll note that we won't really get into private loans. We'll let you know how to decipher federal versus private. But you can see that there are tons of different kinds of federal loans here. We have direct loans, which are the newer loans. We have subsidized, unsubsidized, graduate plus, parent plus, and direct consolidation loans. Those are typically loans that are eligible for the most types of IDR plans, public service loan forgiveness. You don't have to do a whole lot to them to get into the plans and programs that you'd like. Then we also have Perkins loans. These loans are no longer issued. They were loans that were held by your institution. And we'll go over how to decipher what types of loans you have. And then we also have the FFELP loans here. That stands for Federal Family Education Loan Program loans. And we also have a few different kinds of those. So we have subsidized Stafford, unsubsidized Stafford, FFELP Plus, and FFELP consolidation loans. And those loans are, as I said, no longer given out. They were commercially held or held by the Department of Education. And again, Perkins and FFELP loans, you might have to consolidate those, or they just might not be eligible for certain IDR plans and forgiveness programs. So a few things to look at when you're trying to figure out if you have a federal loan versus a private loan. Federal loans, you're going to be able to find them on studentaid.gov. They'll have a fixed interest rate, repayment plans, and forgiveness programs will be available to you. There is a hardship deferment available, again, loan forgiveness programs, and then also default rehabilitation. If you have a private loan, though, those details are going to be found on your credit report, or you'll have to contact your lender if you know who that is. There are variable interest rates, no guaranteed repayment plans, no guaranteed hardship deferment, and there is no default rehabilitation there. So with servicers, these are federal student loan servicers. We've split these up, so hopefully it's easier to find out what loan type you have. Direct loans are going to be serviced by Ed Financial, CRI, Nelnet, and then also Aidvantage and Mohila. Aidvantage and Mohila also service FFEL and Perkins loans, as well as Heartland, Sloan, and AES. And if you have a private student loan servicer, we've listed a few of them here. Normally banks or private and refinancing companies. So we've got Discover, Wells Fargo, PNC. You could also have Navient, Credible, Sally Mae, Earnest, Higher Education, College Ave, SoFi is a common one. And then also the confusing part here is that Mohila is also a private student loan servicer. So now that we know different types of loans, servicers, how to decipher private versus federal, let's get into how to use studentaid.gov. First and foremost, this is the place that you are going to go if you have any questions at all about your federal student loans, any programs available to you. And it's really important to type the address directly into the browser, so www.studentaid.gov. I believe Angel also dropped it in the chat. I would not Google it. There are unfortunately scams out there, so you might come across a predatory website. So please make sure that you have the direct link or you are typing it directly into your browser. And once you log in there, sorry, this is the login screen. You can we can go back to the last slide. Yep, you can create an account, log in here. If you're having trouble logging into your account, you can call 1-800-433-3243 on the screen there. If you are having trouble resetting your password or recovering your account, you can also visit this website on the bottom of the screen here, studentaid.gov/fsa-id/help/recover-account. It's a long address there. But those two resources will help you get back into your account. So once you've gotten into your account, there's a ton of information here. This is your homepage. It's called the dashboard. You can see that there's a lot of servicer information, your due date for upcoming payments. There are links out to your servicer pages, but we're going to focus here on the view details button. And basically, that is going to take you to this page that breaks down all of your loans. And we're just going to keep digging in there to see what's going on with your loans. So this top screenshot here lists out this person has 11 loans. You can see the principal versus interest for the total loan amount. And if you hit view breakdown there, it will bring you to a screen that looks like this bottom screenshot. And you can see here that it lists out a little bit more details about your loan. So you have the servicer there, Mohila, and then Arcadia. And then you can also see the loan balances. You can see the one from Arcadia is $0. Also, that servicer is a university. So that's an indicator that that loan was a Perkins loan. And then if we want to dig in even more, we can click on that view loans button underneath the loan balance. And that will bring you to this page. Again, we are just keep on digging in here, and you can see even more details about this loan balance. So you can actually see that there are a few different loans that make up that $28,000 balance. You can see the loan status, that it is in forbearance. It's in the save forbearance. You can see the repayment plan there, interest rates, total balances, and then also on the far left-hand side, you can see if the loan was subsidized or unsubsidized. All right, so we know our loan types, we know how to get all of this information. So let's get into some student loan repayment options. And on this slide is the 10-year standard repayment plan. So when you enter repayment, you will go into a 10-year repayment plan called the standard plan. If you don't apply for an income-driven repayment plan or an alternative plan. So if you don't take any action, this is where you'll end up. This is a plan with fixed monthly payments, and it takes 10 years to pay off your loan. This 10-year repayment period, I'll note, applies to anyone with an unconsolidated loan or folks with consolidated loans with balances less than $7,500. This plan might be good for you if you're looking to make a dent in your debt, if you're worried about interest accumulating, or if you just want to get out of the system quickly. This is a plan that you might want to consider. However, there are more affordable options for borrowers who are struggling to make that payment. The standard plan is usually the highest monthly payment here. So for borrowers who did not have consolidated or unconsolidated loans or that balance threshold there, you have the 30-year standard repayment plan available to you. And this is if you have consolidated loans. And the 30 years is actually based on your loan balance. So you could have up to a 30-year repayment period. You can see in this screenshot in the top right corner, we've broken it down, or studentaid.gov has broken it down for us to see what the different repayment plans are. And you'll be in repayment on the standard plan until you pay off the entire balance, whether you're in the 10-year or the 30-year repayment plans. There's no forgiveness aspect to these two plans. And again, there are more affordable options for borrowers who are struggling. And we can see here that these are a few of those options. So we went over that standard plan up there. On the left-hand side, we have alternative plans. These consist of graduated repayment, extended graduated repayment. We'll get into a few of those. There's also no forgiveness associated with those plans, but they are helpful for folks who can pay less now and more later. And then we have income-driven repayment plans, which is, of course, the most popular topic here. So we have ICR, income contingent repayment. We have old and new IBR, or income-based repayment. And then we have pay as you earn. And of course, we have save in red. You can no longer apply for that plan. And of course, it is held up in litigation. And we'll just note here that not everyone is eligible for IBR or pay. So you would have to call your servicer and ask them if you are eligible. And with that, we're going to get into those income-driven repayment plans, and I'm going to toss it to Sabrina to walk us through those.
Thank you, Sabrina Ashley. I see that there are lots of questions in the chat. So again, folks, we ask that you be patient with us as we try and get through that. Let's jump right in. Let's take a look at the next slide. All right, so when we're talking about income-driven repayment plans, there are several benefits that come with those plans. Now, these payments are calculated as a percentage of discretionary income, so it's going to be based on income and family size, not the loan amount, which is really great for folks who have a very high loan balance. The monthly payments can often be more affordable than the standard plan. This is especially helpful for folks who have lower incomes, who may have lost their jobs, or whose incomes have decreased. At any point that your income changes, you can call your servicer and recertify saying my income has decreased, it has changed, so that your monthly payment is reflected. So that change is reflected, in your monthly payment. We talked about default earlier. This is a good way for folks to prevent delinquency and default. Often, again, in the standard plan, the payment is unaffordable. So an IDR plan will allow you to make a more affordable monthly payment. And when you recertify your income plan or when you get into one, it locks in a lower monthly payment for a year. So you're in that payment amount for a year. But again, if any changes occur within that 12-month period, you can call and request that your payment be adjusted based on the changes. Now, the downside to IDR plans in comparison to that 10-year standard plan is that it does extend the loan repayment period from 20 to 25 years, and that does depend on the plan. So one thing that I think folks sometimes might get a little tripped up on is that there is an IDR forgiveness, income-driven repayment forgiveness. Now there are IDR plans, and then with it comes a forgiveness portion. So every monthly payment that you make while enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan is considered an IDR credit. It's one credit. So if you are on a repayment plan that is working towards forgiveness in 20 years, you would need 240 credits. And if it's 25 years, you would need 300 credits. Now, once you reach the necessary number of credits, you then become eligible for IDR forgiveness. With that, once the forgiveness is processed, at that point, your remaining balance would be forgiven. That is the goal here for IDR forgiveness. Now, in reality, to be quite frank, it takes a while to process IDR forgiveness. We've seen it be a struggle. And so just flagging that for folks. So that is important to know. It's also important to know that periods of deferment, forbearance, and default do not count towards IDR forgiveness, including the SAVE forbearance. So if right now you are on the SAVE plan and you are in the SAVE forbearance, not having to make payments, that is not counting towards IDR progress. Also, an important note to make here is that because of this ongoing SAVE litigation, which we will discuss shortly, if you are on a repayment plan that is not income-based repayment, the income-based repayment plan specifically, you will not have your IDR forgiveness processed and discharged. Because of the litigation, it's only allowing for loan forgiveness through the IBR plan specifically for IDR. So if you've made payments over 20 years and you reached that number of credits to 240, but you're not in IBR, you may want to get into IBR because that is the only way for you to get your loans discharged at this time through IDR forgiveness. This does not apply to PSLF, to public service loan forgiveness. Next slide. Another question that I've been seeing a lot in the Q&A is about income verification, or something that we often refer to as recertification, which is when you are providing updated information on your income and family size. So ideally, as I said, your payment is locked in for 12 months and you have to recertify after the 12 months have gone by. But we encourage folks to do so around 11 months because you technically have to recertify 10 days before the 12-month mark. So I know that was a little confusing, but essentially every 11 months, you should call your servicer or go through the online form that is displayed here and recertify what your current income is and what your current family size is, so that can be reflected. Now, again, if your income changes throughout the time, you can call your servicer and recertify at any point that there has been a change so that it's reflected. Again, wages decreasing, becoming unemployed, you can give your servicer a call or go on studentaid.gov and reflect those changes. Next slide here. So Sabrina Ashley gave a quick overview of what the existing repayment plans are. So let's talk about this. So there are three repayment plans that I want to get into today. So there is the Income Contingent Repayment Plan, ICR. This is applicable to all, and it is the only option or IDR option for Parent Plus loans. We're going to get into Parent Plus loans shortly as well. There's IBR. There's an older version of IBR, which is available to borrowers with loans prior to July 1st, 2014. There's a newer version of IBR that is available to new borrowers as of July 1st, 2014. And these are often lower monthly payments than that original IBR. And then there is Pay As You Earn, which is available to newer borrowers as of October 2007 who had received a direct loan after October 2011. And then we have the SAVE plan on here because there are people currently enrolled in it. However, no one at this point can apply for the SAVE plan and get into it. So if you're already in it, that's it. If you're not in it, unfortunately, you cannot get into the SAVE plan. And then one question that I was seeing often in the Q&A here is, what is the difference between IDR versus IBR? IDR is the umbrella term. It's like the category. So all of these plans, ICR, IBR, Pay, and Save, are types of IDR plans. So IBR is a specific kind of plan. IDR is the overall program or category of plans. And on the next slide here, we will see how they divide up or the differences of the plans. So if you're enrolled in the Pay plan, excuse me, that is 10% of your discretionary income over 20 years in repayment. The newer IBR plan is 10% over 20 years as well. The older version of IBR prior to July 2014 is 15% over 25 years. And for ICR, it is 20% over 25 years. So there are these small distinctions between the different plans that folks should be aware of. In addition to income-driven repayment plans, there are plans called alternative repayment plans. Now, these are essentially variations of the standard plan. So, like the standard plan, you're just making payments until you pay off the entire loan. There's no forgiveness portion attached to alternative plans. Now, there are 3 options available, and those are the extended, graduated, and the extended graduated repayment plans. They all have different pieces to them. So for extended repayment, all loans are eligible except for Perkins loans, and you can consolidate those Perkins loans to become eligible for extended repayment. These payments are fixed. So extended repayment are fixed payments over 25 years. And it's only accessible to folks who have balances higher than $30,000. Now, for the graduated repayment plan, all the loans are eligible except for Perkins, same thing. Now, the difference here between extended and graduated is that these payments are not fixed on the graduated plan. So the payments will start low and increase every 2 years. And I have an example of that on the next slide that I will get to shortly. And the repayment timeline is tied to the loan type that you have, as well as the balance on your loan types. Now, the extended graduated repayment plan is a combination of the two, in which the loan eligibility is the same. The repayment timeline is going to be longer, so it's 25 years. And the payment amount goes up every 2 years. So those are the 3 options. But on the next slide here, we have a screenshot of the graduated repayment plan, just so that folks know what it looks like for a monthly payment to increase every 2 years. So in this example, the person has about $30,000 in loans, but if they got into the graduated repayment plan, their first monthly payment would be $192, but by the end of their repayment term, it would be about $575. So that is a big jump in repayment plan. So folks need to be aware of that. And the repayment period will vary as well on graduated. So it'll be either 10 years, 12 years, 15, 20, 25, or 30. Again, that all depends on your loan balance. So those are important things to know, and alternative options to IDR plans, because we have heard from folks that have explored all IDR options, but want to see if there's anything else available. So we want to go over that for you as well. And for folks with Parent Plus loans, we know that the options available to Parent Plus loans are often more limited than other loan types, excuse me. So the only income-driven repayment plan, IDR option, available to Parent Plus loans is income contingent repayment, the 20% over 25-year plan. So in order for a Parent Plus loan to be eligible for this plan, you would need to consolidate it into a direct consolidation loan to qualify. And yes, you can consolidate a single loan into a direct consolidation loan. The repayment period is 25 years, meaning 300 credits, with the remaining balance forgiven if you enroll in ICR. And Parent Plus loans are also eligible for the alternative plans. However, again, there's no forgiveness portion attached to those plans. All right, we're going to get into the SAVE plan. I saw quite a few questions about it, so let's get into it. Now, there are current lawsuits against the SAVE plan, and we're seeing that impact directly on borrowers. Now, the cases are ongoing. We don't have a timeline for what is going to happen to SAVE, when it's going to happen, but the SAVE plan essentially cannot be offered to anyone and has been removed from all IDR applications, so that, again, folks cannot apply for it. If you applied for the SAVE plan, if you were enrolled in the SAVE plan, you've been placed into a forbearance. This was an involuntary forbearance, meaning you did not have to apply for this specifically because the servicers are unable to bill folks properly at this time. So they put everyone in there. There's about 8 million folks enrolled in SAVE. Now, during this specific forbearance, you are not required to make payments and interest is not accruing. Now, you might see interest being displayed on your account, but the servicers, Mohila, Advantage, Nelnet, and Ed Financial are all displaying it differently. So Mohila might not be showing the interest accumulating, but we've heard cases where Advantage shows the interest accumulating, but the goal is to remove that retroactively. So it does depend on your loan servicer in terms of interest appearing on your account if you are in this forbearance. As I said before, forgiveness through pay and ICR is currently enjoined, meaning that if you're working towards IDR forgiveness, you have to be enrolled in IBR if you're at the point of forgiveness to benefit from it. So if you're enrolled in the SAVE plan and you've reached the 20 or 25 years of forgiveness, we recommend that you consider enrolling in IBR if you qualify for it so that you would be eligible for that loan forgiveness to go through. So that is really important for folks to be aware of. A question that we have been hearing and getting often is, will I receive IDR, so income-driven repayment forgiveness, or public service loan forgiveness credits during the SAVE forbearance? And the answer, unfortunately, is no. Time in this forbearance does not count towards either of those programs. We've heard that folks can take advantage of the buyback program to potentially buy back time spent in the SAVE forbearance if you're working towards public service loan forgiveness. You essentially have to have reached the 120 credits in order to take advantage of this program, but there is no guarantee that the administration will allow for that time to count towards public service loan forgiveness. There's no certainty there. So just something to flag. Borrowers who do choose to enroll in another IDR plan to get out of SAVE or to get out of your current repayment plan, you will be placed or should be placed in a processing forbearance. And in a few minutes, I will go over the differences between all of these forbearance types because there's a lot that I'm covering right now. So time spent in this processing forbearance, which essentially is a point of getting you from one plan to another, does count towards public service loan forgiveness, not IDR, as we've been told recently, and you will accrue interest during that time. The next slide here. So a question that you have to ask yourself if you're enrolled in SAVE, should I get out or should I apply for, or should I remain in the plan, essentially? So you might want to consider getting out of SAVE if you want to receive public service loan forgiveness credits on another repayment plan, if you want to receive income-driven repayment credits as well, and especially if you are close to the forgiveness portion. So if you're at 239 or at 299 IDR credits, you might want to get out. If you're at 119 PSLF credits, you might want to get out of SAVE as well. You should consider sticking with the SAVE plan if right now you don't mind the fact that you're not receiving PSLF or IDR credits, if you don't mind the fact that you are not having to make payments, which I know for some folks is very helpful, especially right now, and if you'd like to remain in an interest-free forbearance. Again, this is a personal decision. There's no right answer. It is up to you whether or not you want to stay and save for a little bit longer until it plays out in the courts, or if you want to get out now and continue making progress towards forgiveness. Now, as I said, there are the different, oh, excuse me, how can I apply for an IDR plan? This is really important. So you can apply online or via a paper application. So you can find the online application at studentaid.gov, and the paper forms can also be found there. You can also visit your servicer's website and upload a paper form to the servicer's website if you prefer it that way. Everyone needs to provide income documentation right now, whether it's through tax return, W-2, pay stub, to prove your documentation, your income, excuse me, for them to be able to calculate your income-driven repayment monthly payment amount. The processing's paused right now, but they are extremely delayed, and we anticipate that once they get the processing back up on its feet, it's still going to have a humongous process and delay through a backlog. So I anticipate that taking, again, more than 60 days potentially for your application to be processed. The middle of May is when we've heard that application processing will resume. Next slide here is where, okay. So in order to apply for an IDR plan, it's important for you to have some of this information: your permanent and or mailing address, your family size, employment information, employer address, income documentation, again, a W-2, a pay stub, anything like that. And even if you've opted in to IRS integration on studentaid.gov in the past, you are still required to provide that income documentation at this time. All right, something else that we have seen on studentaid.gov, when you log in on the left-hand side, this is what your dashboard should look like. So if you're working towards public service loan forgiveness, you'll see that tracker up top. And if you're working towards IDR forgiveness, you'll see that tracker on the right-hand side, which is called IDR end of payment term. So there you will see how much time you have left in repayment. So in this case, in myself, I'm in the save forbearance right now, and I haven't been in repayment for that long. So I would still have 15 years left in repayment. But you might be a lot closer, and you might only have 2 months left in repayment. So I encourage everyone to log into studentaid.gov, document all of this, take screenshots, photos, print these numbers so that you can advocate for yourself that you are at this point in repayment. We don't know if they're going to take off this this tracker from studentaid.gov at any point, so our recommendation is always to document wherever and whenever you can. And in terms of identifying your monthly payment on different repayment plans, our recommendation is to, I know this isn't fun, but call your servicer and ask, what IDR plans am I eligible for, and what are the estimated monthly payments? If you're working towards public service loan forgiveness, you should specify that to them so that you maintain eligibility and are enrolled in a plan that qualifies for forgiveness. We, in the past, have recommended folks use the loan simulator on studentaid.gov. However, we have seen incorrect information reflected through the loan simulator. So if you do want a more concrete answer when it comes to what your estimated monthly payments are across the different plans, I recommend calling your loan servicer and getting that information over the phone. So what if I can't afford my payments? Now, if you can't afford your payments, we want to make sure that you are still staying out of delinquency and default. So if you can't afford it and you've explored all of the existing income-driven repayment plan monthly payment amounts and you just can't swing it, that's okay, it happens. There are these temporary emergency options that pause your payments for a few months. Now there are forbearances and there are deferments. Now the forbearance and deferment both allow you to temporarily stop making payments. Usually on forbearance, you won't be making progress towards forgiveness or paying back your loan during that time. Your payment is paused. Interest does accrue during a forbearance. You can choose to pay the interest if you'd like, but again, you don't have to. That is a forbearance. It's mostly general. It's available to most folks. Now, deferments are a little bit trickier because they have specific eligibility requirements. The interest does accrue on deferments, but in terms of eligibility, there are options available for folks undergoing cancer treatment, economic hardship, graduate fellowship, military service, student deferment, unemployment deferment. There are specific situations in which folks can apply for a deferment. If you're not sure what applies to you, you can look at studentaid.gov and take a look. If none of these deferment options apply to you, you should look into a forbearance. But it is worth noting that there are limited amounts of time that folks can be in a forbearance and deferment. So I believe that you can be in a forbearance for like 6 months, but you can renew the forbearance, but only up to 3 years. After you've exhausted all of your forbearance months, you no longer can get into a forbearance. So that is important to flag for folks. Now, this is what we were referring to earlier with delinquency and default. I think this is a good example here. What happens if you don't make your payments? We've heard folks say there's been an executive order to dismantle the department. I don't have to pay my loans. That is not true. If you get a monthly payment, you should be making it. If you can't make it and you miss a payment, the first day past due is you're in delinquency. 90 days past due, that delinquency is reported on your credit. Loans that remain delinquent, your loan remains delinquent until the payments are made up, or you can also apply for a deferment or forbearance. And if you're granted that, that can bring your loan status out of delinquency. So you're brought back into good standing. That is an option for folks in delinquency. So if you were taking advantage of the on-ramp after payments resumed and you hadn't made payments and you still have not made a single payment, you might be at a late stage delinquency. You should look into a forbearance or deferment to get you out of delinquency potentially. And then 270 days past due is at the point that you're in default. And again, we said that there are consequences of wage garnishment, Social Security garnishment, tax refund seized, and there are loan rehabilitation or loan consolidation options available to get you out of default. You can find all of that information at studentaid.gov. And I know that Angel from our team is also going to drop that link in the chat here. What happens if you default on your loans? I don't want to take up too much time here, but essentially your entire loan amount becomes due in full. Borrower can be sued. You would become ineligible for financial aid and repayment plans. You would be sent to collection agencies. There's often harassment attached to this. Essentially, this is really harmful and it feels harassing and it feels horrible for someone to be in default and to have these harassments. We know that folks that are in default are often already struggling with their finances. And so to undergo and subject someone to something like this is really heartbreaking. So again, if you are in default, there are options to get you out of it. And with that, I'm going to toss it to Natalia Abrams to go over public service loan forgiveness. And we are wrapping up, folks. Thank you so much for hanging on with us.
Yeah, thank you, Sabrina. And we know this is a lot, but there's been so many changes. We get calls and emails all of the time. The folks looking for this guidance. Many of you will probably go back to the recording to see which parts pertains to you. This next part is public service loan forgiveness. So let's get right into it so we can try to stay on time. We may go a little over. And I also want to thank everyone on our team, the Sabrinas, Angel, Gabby, for fielding your questions in the Q&A box. Okay, so public service loan forgiveness is for public service workers. It's exactly what it says. The program started October 1st, 2007. Why is that important? That's because while we appreciate any work you did prior to that, the only work that will count will be after October 1st of 2007. You need to make 120 monthly payments or 10 years. And then you can apply ahead of time, but you will make sure to do the application and get approval. The reason there are 3 pluses there. If you are somebody that has already hit your 120 months, you probably know what I'm about to say, but unfortunately, the processing times have been very delayed and it can take many months after that 120-month period of time. And you have to stay working in your public service job until you receive the check. Payments are not cumulative, not consecutive. So we know people go in and out of public service work, and that's okay. You just need to have a total of 120 months. There should be a tracker at studentaid.gov that will show you clearly how many months months of time you have put in or to public service loan forgiveness or credits, as we often refer. All remaining debt is tax-free at the federal level. I believe Missouri, check with your state, the majority of the states as well, it is not taxed, but just to point out that discrepancy. So what do you need to be counted for this? Do you have a direct loan? That's why we went over the loan types, Sabrina Ashley earlier. Direct loans qualify. Does your employer qualify? We'll go over that. Are you in a qualifying repayment plan? All of the income-driven repayment plans count. Make sure to document your employment. We often see discrepancies in credits where borrowers have attained more credits than what's showing up. That's why it's very important to document on your end. And then afterwards, make sure to go back, make sure everything's okay after the 120 qualifying payments. So the best thing you can do is be in an income-driven repayment program, paying as little as possible, and be in the public service loan forgiveness program if you work a public service job to receive the maximum benefit. There are borrowers that are paying $0 for the entire 10 years and then having their full balance forgiven. I mean, that's the best case scenario, right? But the goal is to pay as little as you can. So what qualifies? All of the direct loan programs, including Parent Plus loans, but it should be noted that the parent must be working the public service job, not their child, but that does qualify of and direct consolidation loans as well. All levels of government, state, local service counts. 501c3s like Student Debt Crisis Center counts, and other critical public service jobs. If you are a firefighter, a police officer, again, thank you for your service, and that also counts. If you are a military service member, that counts as well. The repayment plans, the 10-year standard. We put that there because unfortunately the 30-year consolidated standard loan, which I know gets it confusing, and so many of you consolidated to get into public service loan forgiveness, that does not count if you have consolidated your loan, but if you have a 10-year standard and direct loan, that will count. That's important right now while people can't get in and out of repayment programs, that time on your standard. Folks in SAVE that are looking to get remaining credits, if they are on this tenure, you could always go to standard to get that time counted. ICR, pay as you earn, IBR, all of the income-driven repayment programs count. Unfortunately, as we know, the time on the Save Forbearance since July of last year does not count. The older FFELP loan program does not count unless you've consolidated recently to a direct loan. Perkins is the same thing unless you've consolidated. Defaulted loans, while they're in default, do not count, but if you can get those back into good standing using default loan rehabilitation or consolidation, that will then start counting. Private loans will never count. This is a federal loan program. The other thing we get a lot of is government contractors, adjunct professors, that kind of thing. If your employer is a nonprofit, but you are working with a separate company as a contractor for that, or on W-9 or 1099, that will not count. Labor unions, that means if you work at the labor union, not if you participate in labor activities, that is fine. It's just folks that work directly at the labor unions, and 501c4 nonprofit and political groups do not count. Unfortunately, these alternative plans, which many borrowers are looking to right now with the absence of the SAVE program for folks to enroll in, they do not count. The 30-year standard consolidated loans does not count, and time in deferment or forbearance, including in-school deferment. We know a lot of folks start their public service work early, but unfortunately that doesn't count. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, there are processing delays. PSLF processing is still happening, but the delays are taking much longer than they were in the previous administration. You know, that 10 years or 120 months, you know, feels a little hollow when you're going month after month and still haven't seen it. Hang on, we have not been told that they're not going to process. We are still seeing people get PSLF forgiveness. The best advice we can give is hang on right now. You cannot leave your job. Just stay in your job until after your loans have been discharged. If you leave your job before it's approved, you will not receive loan forgiveness. We highly, highly recommend, and I'm sure Angel's sharing this in the chat right now, the PSLF help tool. Go through it annually, make sure to check on your credits. Look, it shouldn't have to be this way where the onus is on us, but unfortunately that is the broken system that we are in right now. So the more that you can document and keep track of your situation, the better off you will be if there's any discrepancies or errors or issues. Borrowers who enroll in another IDR plan will be placed in a processing forbearance. Time in that processing forbearance, while it does not count towards your IDR program, will count towards public service loan forgiveness. Yes, you'll accrue interest, but that will be forgiven over time after the 10 years. So I would say in this case, don't worry about that interest, even though that's easier said than done. Will the recent executive order impact my forgiveness? We touched on this at the top, but if you're joining us late, and we know many people are concerned, the goal of the executive order against public service loan forgiveness is on eligibility and to limit and get rid of loan forgiveness through ICR and pay. Some of the specific language targets folks working with undocumented folks, transgender folks. We've heard of environment groups being potentially the new group of attack, but keep in mind, nothing has happened yet. Nobody's public service loan forgiveness has been taken away. And we are in the middle of a lengthy process called negotiated rulemaking, which Sabrina Ashley talked about at the top of the hour, where you can make your voice heard right now on why you want public service loan forgiveness, ICR, pay as you earn to stay around, why it's vital to borrowers and to yourself to make sure that these programs stay. We do not expect any changes in public service loan forgiveness to happen for months. It's a lengthy process of this rulemaking, then there'll be a preliminary rule, then a final rule, and then my guess is a lot of lawsuits because this is likely illegal. Okay, so we know this is a lot. There's also federal loan consolidation. Now, this is important for any folks that are on right now that are in default and have not consolidated. I just want to add that if you consolidate, you could essentially halt your default process. So that's something to keep in mind when we're on this slide. But consolidation is really just conversion. You're converting an older loan into a direct loan, or you're combining all of your loans. I would say if you already have a direct loan, I would not consolidate right now because, as you can see at the note below, due to current regulations, if you consolidate, you're creating a new loan, which could erase your repayment history of progress towards public service loan forgiveness or to income-driven repayment. So definitely look at consolidation carefully, but if you're in default, it could be a way to stop those garnishments. You can create a new loan. It takes anywhere from 30 to 60 days. But again, there's processing delays here, just like there is everywhere else. You can consolidate a single loan. So this is important for Parent Plus loans that want to consolidate and be in the direct loan program and take advantage of things like public service loan forgiveness. The requirements are a single FFELP loan, which may be consolidated or converted, which is a better term, to the direct consolidation loan to benefit for public service loan forgiveness. If you're just hearing about this now, you don't have previous credits, this could be for you. If you're consolidating an existing direct consolidation loan, you must have at least one other loan you're combining it with. Be careful with consolidation. If you're a longtime listener of ours, a year ago, we were saying it was the safest time to consolidate. That deadline has passed. And so this is really good for folks in default or folks just learning about the public service loan forgiveness with an older loan and don't have previous credits. So how do you apply for loan consolidation? The same way you apply for IDR and public service loan forgiveness, go to studentaid.gov/loan consolidation. This is being shared in the chat. You can also do a paper form, but we suggest doing online. Just a reminder, don't consolidate if you have a lengthy history of public service loan forgiveness because you don't want to create a new loan. And another reminder that processing is extremely delayed right now. Okay, we are almost there and a little over time, but thank you for sticking with us. Really impressive how many folks have stayed with us the full 2 hours. So there are additional forms of loan cancellation. There's total and permanent disability and borrower defense to repayment. So TPD, or total and permanent disability, provides full forgiveness on your federal loans if you are totally and permanently disabled. So this is not only receiving disability from the government, you cannot be working. You must provide documentation either from the VA, Social Security Administration, or a medical professional. You cannot be working, and there will be a 3-year monitoring period to make sure you're not working. This processing has been delayed till spring and is getting started again. So definitely look into this if you are unable to work and you have a student loan. There's also borrower defense to repayment. You may be eligible for discharge of your federal student loans if you took out loans to attend school that misled you or engaged in other misconduct or violation of certain laws. This was the for-profit colleges. We saw a lot of people do borrower defense claims. If you have a claim right now, I feel like a broken record, but another thing that's been incredibly delayed, but you will have been placed onto a forbearance lasting through 2026, which means no payment until your application is reviewed and you are notified. Then there's closed school discharge, also connected to these for-profit schools, but this is kind of more recent. If you were eligible or discharged from a school that closed down within 180 days after you withdrew, you are eligible for closed school discharge. There's teacher loan forgiveness, which is separate than public service loan forgiveness for teachers that teach full-time for 5 years and for 5 complete and consecutive academic years in a low-income school or educational service agency. You could be eligible, depending on where you fit in there, for $5,000 to $17,500 in forgiveness. This requirement's 5 years. You can do this concurrently, or you cannot do this at the same time as public service loan forgiveness, and it does not forgive all of your debt the way public service loan forgiveness does. The last ones I'm not going to go through. They are pretty self-explanatory, but false certification eligibility, somebody applying in your name that's not you, Perkins loans forgiveness to the school directly, and a discharge of and an unpaid refund or death discharge. Your federal student loans do die with you. That is not and we get this question sadly a lot, that is not something that you will ever have to pass on to your children, including the Parent Plus loan. Okay, well, with all this confusion, processing delays, there are so many scams out there. Everything we've talked about today is completely free of charge. This workshop's free of charge. You do not need to pay for student loan debt help. That's the biggest takeaway here. Beware of bait and switch scams that are promising immediate loan forgiveness or talking about a deadline approaching. There are currently not any big deadlines for applications. The only deadlines that we know of right now is this awful May 5th deadline where garnishment will resume. They'll offer debt forgiveness in exchange for a very high fee. We've heard of $600 or more that borrowers pay for help that you can email us and you can get it for free at studentaid.gov. If you have issues or complaints, we talked a lot about this at the top of the hour. Highly recommend the Student Work Casework tool, contacting your Attorney General, contacting your state ombudsperson. You can still submit comments at the Financial Student Aid or FSA Feedback Center. However, we are hearing people are not hearing back due to the reduction of force and the fact that there's not really a lot of good quality people in the ombuds office. Okay, a reminder of what you can do right now. We've said this before, but make sure you know who your student loan servicer is and have access to your account on their website. Save and document any communication you receive from your servicer. Make sure to print, download, screenshot, and save any information that details how many PSLF and IDR credits you have. That IDR tracker on the corner, on the sidebar, and the PSLF toolbar. Take screenshots of that. Consider enrolling in income-based repayment if you qualify. This is something that's been written into law by Congress and is technically the safest program right now. We don't know what's going to happen to IDR programs, but we're going to continue to communicate changes with you as quickly as possible. Reminder that loan or processing for these IDR programs is supposed to start on May 10th. So we will finally start to see folks processed into the right repayment programs. And make sure to call your loan servicer or go to studentaid.gov to see if you qualify for income-based repayment or the other IDR programs. Please make sure to sign up to our mailing list. You can do so at student.crisis.org, and you can follow us on all social media. It's not a shameless plug. We really do communicate as up to date as we can at DebtCrisis.org on all social media platforms. And with that, I will throw it back to you, Sabrina.
Thank you, Natalia. We're going to get right into these FAQs, but there's one slide that we missed that I'd love for us to go back to. And I think it was the one that compares the different forbearance types. If we can find that one. And essentially, and I can start getting into
one
it.
one moment, technical
No
difficulties,
worries.
but working.
Take your time. So there are 3 different types of forbearances that I want to cover today. So there are regular forbearances, there is the save forbearance, and there is a processing forbearance. Now, the general forbearance or the regular forbearance is something that you have to actively apply for. It's what I was talking about when I discussed forbearance and deferment. That is typically for someone going through financial hardship who cannot afford their monthly payment. You can apply for a general forbearance. So that is voluntary. You're choosing to enroll in that plan. Now, if that applies to you, if that's helpful for you, great. The other forbearance type is the save forbearance. Now, the save forbearance is involuntary. Perfect. Thank you, Natalia. And the save forbearance is involuntary, so no one had to apply for it. If you were enrolled in SAVE, you were placed into the SAVE administrative forbearance. It's a type of administrative forbearance. You'll hear folks refer to it as administrative or just SAVE forbearance. It's the SAVE administrative forbearance. No payments are required during that time, and interest is not accruing during the SAVE forbearance. You are also not receiving PSLF or IDR credits for the time spent there. If that's a concern, we recommend you switch into another repayment plan. Now, if you are switching from SAVE or from any repayment plan to another, there is something called a processing forbearance. Folks who go into a processing forbearance, you might be in there for up to 60 days. And while you are placed into this forbearance, interest is accruing, but you are also receiving PSLF credits. That's important to know, not IDR credits for the processing forbearance. If, let's say, I'm in SAVE today and I want to apply for IBR and I apply for it and 60 days have gone by, but they have not processed my application, they will then place you back into a regular forbearance until they figure out and process your application, essentially. So there are the 3 different forbearance types. The traditional forbearance you have to apply for, the SAVE forbearance you don't have to apply for, you were placed in it if you were enrolled in SAVE, and the processing forbearance is what you're supposed to be placed in as you go from one repayment plan to another. If your servicer does not place you in a processing forbearance, you can call them and say, I am demanding, it's your right to be placed into a processing forbearance. and not have to make payments while they move you from one plan to another. So I just really wanted to go over that with folks because that is important to know. But I know that our first question was, what can folks do to get out of delinquency? So if folks want to get out of delinquency, you can apply for a forbearance or deferment. That's one way to get out of a delinquency, or you can make up the missed payments that you have not made to bring your loans back into good status, into good standing. What can folks do if their loans are in default? With default, you can take advantage of loan rehabilitation, which is a lengthy process, but it's still a good way to get your loans out of default. There's also loan consolidation. By creating a new loan, you're essentially bringing your loan into good standing. So there are options. These are all available at studentaid.gov. I encourage folks to look at that website, use it. There's very helpful information there. If you're pursuing public service loan forgiveness but are currently in the SAVE forbearance, what can folks do to resume PSLF progress? We recommend that if you're working towards PSLF and you're very close to it, that you get out of the SAVE forbearance, apply for IBR, which is the safest plan if you qualify. If you don't qualify, look into PAY or ICR as an alternative option. We recommend that. When can we expect IDR processing to resume? As Natalia mentioned, we heard May 10th is when they're going to be resuming IDR processing. It could take longer. We don't know. But we expect there to be a backlog, so anticipate that there will be some additional delays. When is the last day to submit a public comment for negotiated rulemaking or NEGREG? So we shared that link a couple of times in the chat. For you to submit a public comment, the deadline is May 5th. So Monday, May 5th is the last day to submit that public comment. We encourage folks to submit one in support of PSLF and IDR plans. What if I applied for an IDR plan months ago and my application is still not processed? Should I reapply? So if you apply for an IDR plan, let's say November of last year, and you still have not heard back on your application, we recommend you go ahead and resubmit an application. There's a chance, and we've seen it happen often, that your application just is lost. It happens. And so we recommend resubmitting another one to make sure that this one actually goes through. And what if I applied for a consolidation and the application is still not processed? This is trickier because right now we're in a period where you could lose repayment history, PSLF credits, IDR credits, and we don't want that to be the case. So be mindful of that. If there is a specific reason for you applying for a consolidation, like you have Parent Plus loans and want to get into ICR, we recommend consolidating. Just be aware of the potential consequences there. But if you were just consolidating for no particular reason, just to have one single loan, you might want to reconsider that if you do have a significant repayment history. Now, I know that was a lot of information. As we said multiple times, there are some resources here available. We are going to be sending out a recording of this tomorrow. It's going to be sent to you via email through Zoom, excuse me. So keep an eye out for that. We are very grateful to all of you for joining us today. We really appreciate you. I appreciate my team. Thank you, Natalia, Sabrina, Ashley, Angel, Gabby, everyone who helped to contribute, all of our guest speakers. We could not do this without you. Our movement is stronger because of you. We encourage you to continue speaking up, advocate for yourself. Again, follow us on social media, email, all of the things. We appreciate you all. Keep in touch. Take care, and we will continue communicating updates. Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.